Today we're going over the Commander cards most worth buying for the month of February.
I'm Mia, and I recently stopped drinking coffee.
I'm BZ. I don't like hot beverages. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. Now, let me be real with you. If you want free shipping on your orders and you want your orders to be together, correct, in place, and delivered in a time frame that is reasonable, like you order the cards and they arrive before you forget that you even ordered them, that's Card Kingdom. They're going to give you perfect service the whole way through.
Card Kingdom has pre-cons, singles, doubles, triples, anything you need that is card related, Card Kingdom has. So if you use our link, you get to see our page on there, which is super awesome, and it helps us. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
NERDS
at checkout, you can save 5% of your room and tax dollars on your entire order, which includes BZ and my favorite sleeves, the matte red and orange ones.
We're also sponsored by Moxfield. Not yet. We are going to absolutely surprise you later with a Moxfield ad that you can't predict, so don't even try.
We also have a Patreon. If you want to support us there, you get exclusive content never before seen anywhere else, and you can get a shout out like our patron Blitzflix.
You can even get on the show when we upgrade your very own decks on youtube.com. February's here, and that means we got to go over the cards that we think are most worth buying right now. That does not mean go out and buy 100 of them to pay for your child's college tuition. That does mean get maybe 2 or 3 copies, store them away because you're going to play them in Commander because they're 100% worth buying at X price right now. So we're super excited about these, and I think we're starting off with an absolute banger. Shout outs Innistrad Remastered because they reprinted Craterhoof Behemoth. This is a $25 card at the moment. It is 5 green for a 5/5 haste. When Craterhoof enters, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. It needs no introduction. We barely even had to read it right now because you were like, oh boy, Craterhoof scares me.
Craterhoof is always a problem when it hits the table because it is usually an insta-I win button. This is one of the best finishers, if not the best finisher, for green decks in general, and he's just a powerhouse. The last time we saw a Craterhoof at $25 was when the Secret Lair got reprinted and a bunch of new copies like flooded the market. This is the first notable reprint that Craterhoof has had since the Secret Lair, and it only comes in retro, which is the first time for this card.
Craterhoof is one of those special Magic cards that warps the entire game around it, even just by existing. If I know that Craterhoof is in your deck, I kind of have to play the game tiny bit differently because I know that once you have 6 or 7 or 8 creatures, that's like lethal territory. If you fire off a Court of Calling or a Green Sun Zenith or any toolbox card, or you just draw it naturally, I got to watch out for that, so it might mean that I board wipe a little bit sooner. I play a little bit more scared because this card is so ridiculous that it just wins the game by itself, so you've got to make sure that you prepare for it.
I would highly recommend picking this up at $25. I bought it recently at like $36 and it was worth it then for a very good and consistent finisher, but seeing it at $25 makes me think maybe I should pick up another one.
Yeah, the card's only going to go up.
I think so too. The next one is going to be White of the Reliquary, or White of the Reliquary as we like to say. $3.50. Green-black for a 2/2 with Vigilance. White of the Reliquary gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. If you tap it and sack another creature, you can search your library for any land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This finds stuff like Field of the Dead if you're busy, or any of your lands if you like things like Cabal Coffers or Nykthos. I couldn't think of another land.
name 5 lands. I think also, even if you're not going over the scripted BZ route of getting Field of the Dead first, even if this just said get a basic, no other card really does this. There's no tap to rampant growth cards out there. So if your deck is one that this card says tap rampant growth or better, you should probably be playing it. It's really cheap. The Vigilance actually is relevant because it lets you chip in early if you fire off. I have done this before. You fire off, White of the Reliquary turn 2, and then you play like a Grizzly Salvage turn 3. Cool, you just have like a 4/4 beater now. You just chunk somebody for 4, sacrifice one of your useless dudes. It's great follow-up to play like Honest Rutstein or Grist or something that makes a token every single turn, and then you just go off. And it's now like this little engine is demanding an answer from turn 2, and oftentimes before they can even answer it, you get to activate at least once.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. That definitely feels like MH3 power creep because they were like, oh, I don't know, is this good enough? I don't know, let's just staple on Vigilance to it too, just in case it wasn't powerful enough as a 2-drop. This is one of the better, if not one of the best 2-drops that you can really be playing if you're trying to find a certain type of land, or if you're playing a graveyard value deck as BZ often likes to do.
Yeah, Knight of the Reliquary I think is a pretty good card, and you can get a ramp type effect out of it if you sacrifice a forest for a land that taps for more than 1 mana like an Ancient 2, or if you're sacrificing and you're doing some kind of weird floaty things or you care about that. But this is a mana less, and it doesn't sacrifice lands, it sacrifices creatures. So you're turning creatures into lands, which is ramping you more than a Knight of the Reliquary. As much as I love Knight, it's like one of my 10 favorite cards. White is way better, and it might be even way favoriter by me.
I'm surprised you haven't put this in basically every deck that you can.
Oh, it's basically in every green-black deck I have already. It's such a good card. But speaking of good cards, this reprint absolutely destroyed the price. From Innistrad Remastered, we have Gravecrawler, not at $12, not at $8, not at $5. I'm just going to list more cards, more numbers than it isn't. It's at $2 right now. It's black for a 2/1. It can't block, we don't care. And you can cast it from your graveyard as long as you control a zombie.
This is just one of the staple cards in zombie decks. With the new Hashaton / Temment deck that just came out, this is going to be a favorite. And I'm so happy that those came out side by side because that's so thematic.
Yes, Gravecrawler is one of the scariest zombies, period. I think it's in, without giving you a definitive list, it's in my top 3 best zombies because it is just a card that you can cast and sacrifice and cast over and over and over again. You have your undead augurs and stuff that trigger off when zombies die. You can sacrifice it with like an Ashnod's or a Phyrexian Altar to get mana, and like with Phyrexian Altar or other sack outlets and a Rooftop Storm, it goes infinite. So this is a card that's really, really good in your deck, no matter what, as long as you can sacrifice creatures or play creatures for value. And then if you assemble like A plus B plus C, you just win. And so Gravecrawler has such a high ceiling, it's literally as cheap as a zombie could be.
I feel like now that all of the reprints of Innistrad Remastered just came out, it's very possible to build a very solid budget zombie deck, especially like a Dimir one.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about Gravecrawler is you don't have to be mono zombies. I think if your commander is a zombie and you want to activate some kind of combo things in the mid to late game, this is a totally reasonable choice. And I like it now at $2 because it's just, how do you not pick up? I'm going to go pick up 5 Gravecrawlers because it's just, I'm going to play this card everywhere that zombies are, and it's such a good engine almost by itself.
No, that is not a spec for this month. Stay tuned.
No, we'll get to that.
The next card that is also a reprint and is a very spicy one, it's Cryptolith Rite at $5. 1 in green for an enchantment. Creatures you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. Cryptolith Rite is great in those green-white creature token decks. You can actually just use your creature tokens to make more mana, effectively making everything a mana dark. To see it at $5 is amazing, and seeing it come down on turn 2 means that all of your next few turns will be fueled by this. I really like this card.
Yeah, Innistrad Remastered did wonders for a bunch of these pricey cards that hadn't seen a reprint or a reprint at all in like 10 years or something. And Cryptolith Rite's definitely one of them. I guarantee this thing was like 13 plus last time I checked before the set came out. And $5 just feels like a steal. Getting to, scale your board twice as fast by now. All of your lands are lands and all of your creatures are lands. And it just makes you more creature mana, which makes more creature mana. And it just lets you go off. And being an enchantment, it's really hard to answer, unlike, I think, Citnul Hierophants, that may or may not be a card, but the one that lets your creatures tap for green, that's a creature, it's a little bit more susceptible to removal.
I mean, this is also just so affordable now. There's that one that you like, the Elven Chorus?
That's a good one too.
Yeah, that is one, but that is more expensive in terms of mana. This one's cheaper in terms of mana, and it is more affordable now, so you can put it in more of your decks. And BZ loves that card that makes all of his creatures tap for mana.
I do love any way to make Ishkana tokens even better than they already are. So next we're gonna go to a card that we both love lately. This is just a hammer. It's Karlach, Fury of Avernus at $13. 4 and a red for a 5/4. Whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike until end of turn, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. It also has choose a background, but we don't care about that because we're playing it in the 99, baby. Extra combats, it works right away, and unlike a Relentless Assault, it's not a one-time deal. You play it, get your thing. Now it's still in play as a threat. It's also kind of chunky. It's going to attack next turn as a 5/4 first strike with an extra combat. That's 10 damage it could represent.
There's so many punchy red decks that this can go in as more of like a top end that you can't really kill that easily, or just as your commander. If you are playing it as your commander, it's so scary, especially paired with some sort of very punchy background. I would be terrified of this. I would be like, that is immediate threat that I need to kill very fast.
Yeah, Karlach combines with so many cards perfectly. Anything with an attack trigger like an Inferno Titan or something, it feels like, it's not one of those cards that you have to put together a bunch of things to win. It's like Karlach plus one other thing can be hitting somebody for 25 plus, like we said, Inferno Titan. That's, with Karlach alone, that's 22 damage and 6 damage that you divide, plus if you Fire Breathe. And there's other things like Ember Cleave. You throw an Ember Cleave on the best attacker that you have after you play Karlach, even if it's not her, you boom, double strike, +1 trample, hits you for 1,000,000 extra combat. Now what are you going to do? Karlach very often just kills somebody right away. It scales in the late game where if you've got this huge mega attack, you just send it and get a free extra one. Karlach is definitely a force to be reckoned with. One of the most overperforming red extra combat cards that we've seen.
I really agree. I feel like we just saw this recently where it's like it just didn't die. Are you going to kill the thing that's swinging it for a ton of damage and Karlach lives and then you still get the extra combat? Or are you going to kill Karlach and you still have this gigantic threat on the board that they've been swinging at you with and you're just taking a bunch of damage or all of your creatures are dying because you have to chump with them?
Absolutely.
I feel like there's just such a hard choice sometimes when this is on the board.
Yes, but next we get to go to one of my favorites, and I will stress that this card is so good that you might not want to play it because of how consistent and ridiculous it is. It's Hermit Druid, not 30 anymore. It's $8. 1 and a green for a 1/1. Get ready to see this more, by the way, whether you like it or not. Green, tap, reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal a basic land. Put that card into your hand, and the others revealed into your graveyard. I love this card for a lot of reasons. Number one, because it scales with how powerful you want to make your deck. If you're playing 35 basics in your deck, this still says, hey, reveal a couple cards, you're going to mill 2 or 3, then you draw a land. That's already pretty good. We don't even have a card that says reveal till you hit a basic every turn and put that into your hand. This says, oh, the rest of those cards? No. Put them in the graveyard. And you can scale that all the way up to, I'm not playing any basics in my deck. Reveal Narcomoeba, flip Dread Return, flash it back for Thoracle, win the game. That's how far you can go. I'm not saying you're going to be encountering a lot of that just because this card got reprinted, but you're going to probably find somewhere in the middle where somebody can just put 5 basics in their deck and say, whenever I pay 1 green mana, I'm going to mill 20 cards. That is unheard of for a 3 mana investment that also draws you a basic land. Hermit Druid is absolutely a monster. Comes down super early. You have to kill it. You're probably going to lose mana in the exchange, and it is a headache to deal with because even if they mill 20 and then you kill it, that graveyard deck is fueled for the rest of the game.
I feel like I only know Hermit Druid in the spiciest of scenarios, as BZ was talking about, because of its high price tag that it used to have. It just never had a meaningful reprint until now. But to see it at $8, I feel like everyone's deck is just going to get that much more spicier when they windmill slam this in.
I'm thinking I kind of want to build some kind of budget brew with Hermit Druid in it. I think it's so easy to slot into like a $100 deck now. It's only $8. I was talking with Mia, and there's a bunch of cards that I keep hyping up that I haven't played anywhere. And she was like, remember when you said Flotsam Jetsam was good? I was like,
I do.
Oh, yeah, I do. And she's like, Skyseeker Serpent and Molt Tender. I was like, oh, I do think those cards are good too. You know, maybe I'll build some like Tassiger deck, and then I can throw Hermit Druid in it and just show people the truth with that one. But we're going to move on to the next card, which is a really solid X for 1. It's kind of undefined because it's Fire Covenant. $4.50 for a 1 black red instant. As an additional cost to cast it, you pay X life, and you divide X damage as you choose among any number of target creatures. This is the utility doofus killer.
I love this card. I've played this anywhere from my Fringe CEDH deck to just being able to just use it in a random Mardu removal spell deck because I think this card is awesome. I have paid anywhere from 5 life to 25 life into it, and it's still been worth it because it's only 3 mana and life can come back.
Yeah, there's really janky combos you can do with it where you pair it with a Blood Artist or a Sangromancer or some way to give the spell itself lifelink, and then you can pay whatever life you want as long as it's not your whole life to blow everything up and get compensated for all that. Meathook Massacre is another one that you can stack up alongside this card that does push it up in playability. But even if this just says you lose 10 life, don't gain any, and you kill 4 things or 5 things, some of which may affect the other things that are left alive in a way that benefits you, you are feeling great. This is such a positive mana to effect ratio.
And it's at instant speed too.
Yep.
So you just wait for everyone to play out their boards and go, okay, on your end step before my turn, tap only 3, and then you're like, okay, I'll pay 10, 15 into it and kill all your stuff. It's a one-sided board wipe.
Yeah, this is just the Esper Sentinel Oracle of Moldiah killer. It just sweeps them away, and it helps you not get buried by all these little things that you can't afford to 1-for-1 every step of the way. You got to develop your board. Maybe this just says take half a turn off and then just cut all that stuff away. Then you can keep developing.
The next card we have is a banger, but it is also a reader. It's Animate Dead at $6.50. 1 and a black for enchantment, and you pick a creature card in your graveyard to enchant. When it enters, if it's on the battlefield, it loses enchanted creature card in a graveyard and gains enchanted creature put on the battlefield with Animate Dead. Return enchanted creature card to the battlefield under your control and attach Animate Dead to it. When Animate Dead leaves the battlefield, the creature's controller sacrifices it, and the creature gets -1, -0. So you're just going to bring something back. It's going to have a little bit less power, and this thing sticks fix to it, but you can actually have combos with it like I do with my Abdel Adrian deck, or like World Gorger combos. There are very spicy combos that you can go infinite with this with.
Yeah, not only does it loop with those cards, it also loops with Renegade Rallier, Sun Titan, and what's the other one I was thinking of? The Leonin Relic Hoarder. That's 5 right there off the bat that are basically just A plus B combos. The fact that this is an enchantment is really, really good for your ability to recur it, because this is a sorcery. It's not like anyone's recurring Reanimate that often. There's no loops with Reanimate. This thing being an enchantment, terrible for templating. We had to read 70 words just for you to go, oh, it reanimates the creature, because the enchantments aren't supposed to do this. But this card is fantastic. You can move it around, enchant it, search for it, just kind of flicker it, get a lot of shenanigans. It doesn't even have to just be creatures from your graveyard. So you can almost put this in any deck and still get some mileage out of it when somebody mills or somebody has a big threat that dies.
I mean, we see things like Reanimate being around this price, maybe a little bit more expensive depending on when you catch it. We see things like Dance of the Dead, which is functionally the same thing, and that's very, very high because of the fact that it hasn't been reprinted. But with Animate Dead, it was reprinted in the MKM Commander product a year ago, so it's still at this lower price, and I really love to see it there.
Yeah, this is definitely a low price for it. The reprint from MKM is at the lowest price that we've seen so far, so it definitely has been trending down. Happy to pick it up at this price. I also think this is a card that once you pair it with Self-Mill or Entomb tutor effects that put stuff in your graveyard, Buried Alive is another one. This is now just 2-mana Razaketh, Valgavoth, Villas, just the most unbeatable Windmill Slam mythics for such a low amount of mana, or even something in the mid-tier like a Hullbreaker Horror or an Archon of Cruelty. Like, these are all amazing cards that I've gotten back many, many times with Animate Dead, and it just makes you a force to be reckoned with, because now you've only paid 2 mana for this ridiculous thing. You have it on this enchantment, which is potentially abusable, and now you got a bunch of mana up to protect it.
It's just such a spicy card. I highly recommend you put this in if you want a little bit more value in those graveyard decks.
Play it with Hermit Druid, actually, or play with this next card, because it's 6, not the number, the Tree Folk. It's a $7 card. It is 2 and a green for a 2/4 reach. When 6 attacks, you mill 3 cards. You can put a land from among those into your hand, so that's pretty nice. And during your turn, non-land permanents in your graveyard have Retrace. That's basically the emblem of Red and 6, and they just threw it on this thing on a creature that you can just play and then just get that effect. It's like all of your graveyard is now your second hand if you have a land in your hand.
Yeah, and you're just packing your deck with lands, and you're like, okay, I'll discard that and pay the cost. Oh, and my best thing is back. That's awesome. You actually just can't kill it.
Yeah, it even has Reach, so it can block things in the early turns after you play it for the first time, and then when it attacks, it fuels itself and gives you a land, which also fuels it, or it just helps you hit land drops. 6 has been kind of ludicrous when we see it, and every time it's in the board, I go, I can't let it live. It's just the best card every single turn. If you have something that's a ridiculous permanent in your graveyard, you can go, okay, 6 it, discard a land, bring it back. Now, even if you kill that thing, they're just going to 6 it again and get it back. You have to answer 6 before you do anything else, and that's tough. That's a tough ask, and sometimes you do answer the 6, but they already cast 2 spells off of it, and you're way behind.
The fact that it comes down on turn 3 because it's just 2 and a green for it to hit the field, and then also if it attacks, you get the land and you go, okay, discard the land I just found into my hand, into the graveyard, and then I'll retrace something else. It's like, that is just so much value.
Yeah, these cards like Malevolent Rumble and Satyr Wayfinder, they're definitely way more budget friendly, but they're a one and done thing. 6 just continuously, with 4 toughness, it makes it easy to attack, consistently just fuels your graveyard, powers up these graveyard decks in a way that not a lot of cards can replicate. Sure, you can Eternal Witness one thing, and that's a great card, you're probably playing it, but you'll have to do extra work to get more things back with it. 6 just lets you do that. Oh, you drew an extra land, you don't want that. Just make it your best card.
The next card on here is a board wipe. It's Chandra's Ignition at $4.50. 3 red for a sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. This is spicy, especially with Voltron commanders and lifelink commanders, because that is going to be so much more value on the board, and it's going to keep that creature alive too.
Yeah, this is mostly an I win button in the Voltron decks, or the decks where you're going to have a 12/12 or bigger reasonably in play most of the time. $4.50 is a great price, because this is one of those cards that crept up. It started at like $2 when nobody respected it, went up to 10, and now with that reprint, it's down to $4.50. But I would highly expect a year again from now, this thing, another big stomping commander like the Mole God, another one of those comes out, and then you're like, oh, this card's $7 again or $8. I should have picked one up before. It's totally worth $4.50 when in half the time you play it, it's an I win the game button, and the other half the time, it's a complete board clear. There is a small window they can respond. It does target your creature, so if they kill it in response, spell does nothing. That's a disaster for you. You lose your best creature and your best spell. But most of the time I do think this hits.
Yeah, especially if your commander has Death Touch or something. That is just a spicy one-side board wipe minus your commander, and then you could swing in if you want to get that commander damage like ticked in. Chandra's Ignition was a house in my Baloth deck. I really love this card because Baloth was a Voltron type deck. So if I used it and his power was like 12 or something, I would explode the entire board. I didn't play many creatures because most of that deck was revolving around Baloth himself. And then I could swing in for commander damage. 1 or 2 hits from that depending on how much they were at already. And they were out of the game hitting that 21 pretty easily. I love that this effectively becomes a one-sided board wipe in Voltron decks.
You can also definitely offset Chandra's Ignition because it would kill all of your other creatures if you have any. Some decks just play a game plan where they only have 2 or 3 in play at a time, and it's like, oh, sorry, Pure Steel Paladin, you have to go away because I want to deal 20 damage to someone's face.
The next card is a card that I have played a lot with in CEDH, and I really like it. It's Archon of Emeria, the white-bordered one that BZ would like to especially shout out, at $2.79. This is a flyer that says each player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. Non-basic lands your opponents control enter tapped. This is a stacks piece, and it also can punch in the air.
This thing is so annoying. It never hits you until it's in play. Just how much that's going to slow you down. Not only are you now fixed to just 1 spell per turn, but most of your lands are entering tapped, and it's especially brutal when you're trying to play like a fetch land. It's like, cool, enters tapped. Next turn, unless you want a basic, the land you fetch for is going to enter tapped if you're trying to fix your mana and get more colors in play. Archon of Emeria is absolutely brutal. Anyone who's playing Baubles, Preordains, that's me, by the way, is just absolutely shut off by this. You're going to need Flash or some way to get around it, and a lot of times it's going to stay in play as players like bide their time and try to adapt to it. It's not something that always eats a removal spell right away, so it's going to slow things down, but if you're ahead on board already, then it's just going to win the game for you.
Especially if you're playing like Control Go, because if you are countering something that someone else has already played, they already played a spell that turn. They can't re-counter you. It's just not allowed.
Yeah, someone else is going to have to intervene to stop that. It's very nice when you're kind of forcing them to make a move. You get to respond, and that's the move they made. You have perfect information. They can't make another move. Really cool. Archon of Emeria, I love that the white border, specifically from Mystery Booster 2, brought it down to $2.79. It's a really good card. It's good in flyers. It's good in a general mid-range value. It just changes the dynamic of the game in a way that's totally great for you. And I want to move on to yet another Innistrad Remastered banger. Necro Duality is only $6 now, and that price may even go down in the future, but it's definitely worth $6 at this moment. It's 3 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token zombie you control enters, you just get a token that's a copy of it. Lately, they've really been in on the doubling XYZ effect, and if you're zombies, that's the Z in the XYZ, you're super, super stoked about this. This is similar to Gravecrawler, like it's a really good value piece. It's more setup, but more payoff, and it still has infinite combos. Necro Duality plus a Sack Owlet plus a Rot Hulk is infinite reanimates of all your zombies, which of course wins the game.
I mean, this was the chase card, or one of the chase cards in that Innistrad Midnight Hunt Crimson Vow-esque time, and it was so, so good, and it's still very good, but seeing it at $6 makes it a lot more like playable in budget decks, as I was talking about earlier with the Dimir zombies, and just a lot more attainable for the average person playing.
Yeah, zombies is eating good. Go out and build the most savage $50 zombie deck of all time, because now you've got like Rooftop Storm came down in price, Necro Duality, Rot Hulk got a bunch of reprints in a row, and like then you got Gravecrawler, and those guys are just going to tag team everybody. Zombie Apocalypse is still a bulk rare. Get out there and kill people with zombies.
Plus, with all of the reprints that are coming with the new precon that's coming out, I am so excited to see all these more like zombie decks running around.
Yeah, that may be a good reason to pick up something like Necro Duality sooner rather than later, because I don't know if Temet and Hashaton, once those precons release, are going to skew the price of some of the more in-demand zombie cards. I think $6 is great. I think you should probably just buy it now.
We have a Planeswalker up next, and it's Dak Faden at $5. He is 1 blue-red for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker, +1, target player draws 2, then discards 2 cards. -2, gain control of target artifact. -6, you get an emblem with, whenever you cast a spell that targets 1 or more permanents, gain control of those permanents. That is a spicy ult, but the other 2 abilities have relevance in the game.
Yeah, this is one of those Planeswalkers that passes, I think what you said was the sorcery test.
Yeah.
If I play this and just do the best mode I can right away, and it dies, am I upset? Nope. The best mode on this is just stealing an artifact. You just yoink a Soul Ring or a Worm Coil Engine or whatever. It scales with the game, so you can take a really important mana rock from somebody and really get like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 value out of it, or steal a big threat in the late game. Somebody plays a Blightsteel, sure, whatever, yoink it, it's yours. I also love that if it does survive, which is not unreasonable, especially if you play it early on turn 3, you start plussing, and looting is a really solid ability just for this 3 mana investment too. If you plus it to 4 and loot, there's a good chance it survives in the early turns to just loot again or then steal somebody's artifact. I love Dak Fade. The funny thing about this is that the ultimate, while cool, it looks awesome, it's actually terrible because unless you build your entire deck around it, almost no deck is playing spells that are going to target opponents' creatures that don't just kill them. So you're not actually going to get anything out of it. Just play for the -2, spam +1s, and win the game.
I also like this card with Liquid Metal Torque. I have seen so many fun interactions because you're going to make someone else's stuff an artifact, and then you're just going to steal with Dak Faden's ability. I think that is a very funny thing that you can be doing.
That is so nasty. That's like I want to say newer, but I think Modern Horizons 2 has been out for a while. But I just now processed it, so it's new to me. That's a really sweet combo with it. I think there's also other really nasty things you could do. You play Dak Faden alongside a Narset, and you plus and target someone else, and now they don't draw 2, they draw 1, and they discard 2. There's other things you could do with it, like a Consecrated Sphinx. You have it, you target someone else, draw 2, discard 2, they're up no cards, you draw 4. Dak Faden's got some sick combos. I'm so glad it's way down in price. This thing used to be like $25, and even more recently it was like $13. Now it's just $5. Thanks, Mystery Booster. Get the salt-inducing whiteboard.
Up next is a spicy green enchantment. It's Guardian Project at $9.50. 3 and a green for an enchantment. When a non-token creature you control enters, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. This is great because we are a singleton format, so we are going to be drawing cards anytime it's a not token.
Yeah, pretty much anytime you play a creature that isn't like Persistent Petitioners or one of those rat colonies, you're going to draw a card. That's almost everything. It also does trigger off of nameless creatures like morphs and disguised things because they don't share a name because none of them have a name. That's a great exchange for you. I love Guardian Project. $9.50 feels really fair for this card. It is an engine that comes down in the mid game, and then if they don't answer it, it just fuels you for the rest of the game by itself because card draw begets more card draw. All of your creatures now say draw a card out of them. They're all Elvish Visionary Plus. Love Guardian Project. It's a green staple. No surprise to anyone that it's a good card, but it is definitely at a price that I think is reasonable right now at $9.50.
I've played this in my Elf Ball deck. It's like, okay, mana dork, draw 3 cards. It is that good. It's just, if you have a bunch of little guys in your deck that you can play very fast, it is going to get you so many cards.
Yeah, this is one of those reasons that I'm not scared to play 7 mana dorks in my deck. I think people are too scared of mana dorks dying to board wipes. Type cards like this and Beast Whisperer and Great Henge that you put in your deck totally mitigate the cost of that in the mid game where it's like, yeah, I played Llanowar Elves. It's more vulnerable than if I Rampant Growth for a forest, but it just drew me a card now because of the Guardian Project. So I love that whole interaction. It's perfect for the decks that are green that do want 50 creatures in them.
I love that too. But the next one that we have in here, we love our veggies on this channel, and the slow lands are going to be $3 to $6.50 depending on which one you get. Shrouded Sanctum is the one we're going to talk about right now. It enters tapped unless you control 2 or more lands, and it taps to add black or white. But all the other ones tap to add X color or Y color, and they will come in tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. I think that these lands are amazing, and from their high at like $25 for the most expensive one back when they were still in standard, to seeing them from $3 to $6.50, I'm going to throw these in a ton of my deck.
These are staples in 2 and 3 color decks. They are almost always entering untapped, and I'm trying to imagine scenarios where these enter tapped and you're bummed about it. That can only possibly be in turn 1 or turn 2. And that means it's in your opening hand. How many lands did you just keep in your opening hand? Probably at least 3 or 2 to 3, and you can easily just wait and hold this until your 3rd land drop and have it enter untapped. I think Shattered Sanctum and the whole lot, some of them are starting to get pricey. The Rakdos one spiked for a little bit. The Golgari and Shattered Sanctums were way up there at 20-something, which was ridiculous. And now they are all completely in the realm of possibility for anyone to pick up. Maybe if you've got enough extra cash sitting around, you pick up like one of each. You're going to use them all eventually.
Yeah, if you are playing like a bunch of colors and you know you're going to be building a bunch of decks, these are good to have around in your arsenal. They are going to be used.
It's important to eat your veggies. You know, you buy those enchantments that double everything you do, but you should also buy some lands that help cast those enchantments that double everything you do. The next card we're going to jump to is a really spicy one. Moxfield.com is the best way to build a deck online. Did you know that? and you got bamboozled. This is a place where you can sort, edit, tag, customize, search cards or decks in any potential combination of those words in many different visual formats that are very helpful to me, and I know will be very helpful to you.
I love building decks on Moxfield. It is great. I just built a Mendicant Gore deck on there. Chat, are we speed maxing? And you can check it out, or any other decks if you wanted to get some inspiration. And you could follow us and see what we've been up to on there.
And you can name your deck something ridiculous like that. It's very possible. And if you want to get all the cards that we are talking about today, Card Kingdom is, of course, a reminder, the best place to do so. So I highly recommend you use our link in the description after this video is over to buy some of these bangers. Now, we got to finish with our spec game because we love competing for absolutely no reason. We are buying 5 copies of a card with the hopes that its price will go up over the next year. That is our little battle that we are doing. We're not trying to move the market. We're not trying to scum anybody. We're just buying 5 of these. So Mia, go over your spec and how your last month's spec did.
Sure, my last month's spec was Shorikai Genesis Engine. I thought that was going to be good because I thought there were going to be more vehicles in Aether Drift. Unfortunately, there were not as many. However, my spec was still good because it went up $1. I'm not mad at that. This month's spec is going to be Threefold Thunderhulk. It's $1.29, and this is going to be the normal LCI number 265 printing. I've been putting this card in a lot of decks that can run it because it is very powerful. It's also very powerful in Hashdown if you're building a more casual, less CEDH style of it, and because it's a great target to put 3 counters on, it comes with a 4/4 and you make 7 little gnomes immediately. I think this card at $1.29 is well worth its price, and I could see it going up in the future.
It's a card that we just keep putting into decks. I think it's absolutely the new Mirror Battlesphere. I love it way more than that. My last spec was Imposter Mech. I had a similar theory. I was like, if there's going to be a lot of vehicles, which there are, there's surely vehicle payoffs, and there just wasn't. So my mech is up $1, and I'm happy to get that. Guardian Scalelord is my spec for this month. $1.99. I'm going to get the extended copy. I got 5 of those coming in the mail, and I'm just kind of thinking forward to Tarkir Dragonstorm. Let me find a dragon card that is not widely printed, that was only in a precon, that is actually kind of Tarkir flavored. If there's counter stuff like there was in the Dromoka and the Abzan, this next time for Tarkir Dragonstorm, maybe I'm in business and I got something cooking.
Are you ready for this to be printed in the precon like Lightning Runner?
I am, but this won't be a mistake like Lightning Runner was last year. So if you want to see more specs, more cards that are still worth buying from January, you got to watch this video or else you're missing out.